I've only got myself the Sony XB13, XB extra bass. We already had some bass, now we've got extra bass. Well, hang on a sec. It's replacing the Sony XB12. It was already XB, extra bass, extra bass, extra bass. I'll tell you something else about Sony, which I love. Every speaker they come out with apparently defies the laws of physics. 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. That's fantastic. Oh, by the way, that's a load of nonsense, isn't it? So we've got the XB13. The first thing you will see is it's a little bit bigger. Yes, they are different colors, but of course, it's because I bought a different color. They come out in several colors. And I thought green was quite nice, but the thing that got me was this was incredible. Enjoy powerful sound with extra bass. It turns out it's got a passive radiator. Oh, we get a lot of speakers with passive radiators, don't we? It's not really extra bass. It's kind of how you design a speaker. Passive radiator, giving you a bit of free bass, working on the air pressure of the woofer. So we've got one full range woofer, and we've got a passive radiator alongside it. And that's why, of course, it's a bit bigger. Oh, hang on a second. It's not the reason. The XB12 and the XB13, they both had 46mm woofer. Call it a woofer. Yeah, it's a little speaker. It's almost a tweeter on its own, isn't it? Almost a tweeter, because these are both 5 watts, by the way. An incredible RMS 5 watts. But both are 46mm woofers, one passive radiator. You've got to give it to these marketing guys. They're looking to make the next speaker sound even better than the last. Even though same size drivers, passive radiators in almost all of our portable speakers, except for the £160 Sonos Roam, that apparently they charge £160 because it's a different kind of speaker. Apparently, if I look at some of the high-end reviews that say this is a nice speaker, the Sonos Roam, it's because apparently you can't judge it like the old ones. I know they're saying it's a Bluetooth travel speaker, yeah, but this is a different kind of speaker because it's Sonos, and you can turn it around and it still says Sonos. Getting back to the Sony XB13. You really want to, come on, you want a serious review. A lot of you have been telling me, well, one of you told me, I don't know where your jokes end and your serious review starts. A, it should be obvious, and B, I didn't know I was telling any jokes, to be quite honest. I really do talk like this in real life, to be absolutely honest with you. So this is the Sony XB13 against the Sony XB12. Why is it bigger? It's got the same size woofer. It's got a passive radiator. I know this is making it sound fantastic. It's got extra bass, but the extra bass appears to be because they're calling it extra bass because it's got passive radiator. That's nothing new. That's not extra bass. That's normal bass. And the other thing they are talking about with this is, sounded incredible. I wrote it down somewhere. This has got a Sound Diffusion Processor. Sound Diffusion Processor. That's absolutely fantastic. That's something we've never had before. Oh, hang on a sec. What is it? Well, it's DSP. We've got that in all our Bluetooth speakers. Digital signal processing. That's how they get a bit more bass out of a very small speaker. Physics you cannot break the laws of physics. All these little speakers require EQ to get a bit more bass out of them. Otherwise, they would sound pretty awful. So they've all got digital sound processing. So Sony, we've seen them do little things before. Sony become very shy in their specs as well. We don't really get all the specs. If I quickly have a look at the specs, £36 I can get the Sony XB12 for. Well, that's reasonable for that size. It's not going to shake your walls, obviously. It's a 5 watt speaker. Know what you're getting. That's 5 watts. I know you will go on some of these reviews by some of the people who actually sell it. This is incredible. And they actually say, oh, room filling sound. It sounds fantastic. Well, it's a 5 watt speaker. Bear in mind, 5 watts is not going to go loud. This is 55 quid. This is into the territory of my favourite £50 speaker, the Soundcore Boost. Version 2, they call it upgraded. £55 for that. Is it really going to prove to be something incredible? I said they don't show you all the specs. They're not telling you the battery. We know in the original XB12, it was 5.2 watts. Given that they're still both 5 watts, it's probably the same battery, probably still 5.2 watt hours, not a big battery, not a big speaker. Something a little bit different with Sony. Well, you don't get LDAC, which you'd hope to with Sony. As for the better speakers, audio clue there. but it's not defaulting to SBC, so probably something, it's defaulting to AAC. Obviously you'd expect that on your iPhone and the likes, but AAC defaults to that on Android, means it should be a little bit better than if it was SBC. Old technology, I'm sorry, 4.2 used to mean you still get an auxiliary, but you've removed your auxiliary. For a lot of you now, that's a deal breaker for any upgrade. You've got an auxiliary input on your Sony XB12. You have a look now behind the flap of the Sony XB13. It's just your USB-C charging port. You can pair them as stereo. And what I was talking about, you know, the problems with Sony, and they're going shy on their specs, like they don't tell you officially what that battery is. A lot of the specs you've got to try and search out yourself, but it's the battery. I know this is an ongoing debate, guys. Well, tell us, how long does it go? Oh, your test was that and it doesn't go on mine. You just need to know the size of the battery. No amazing technology. They're all using the same technology for the batteries. If you get more bass in one speaker, you'll get less. Obviously, you're going to get less battery life. And if another speaker goes louder, it's going to be less battery life. It's not that the other one's more fantastic, but what Sony do that some of the others don't, battery management. You may or may not want that. So if I test my XB12 at maximum volume, I can get 5 hours 40, but hang on a sec. It's only going 2 hours 5 minutes at maximum volume, reduces volume, another 2 hours 3 minutes, then reduces again. 1 hour 32 minutes for a total of 5 hours 40. I know they say, oh, it will go up to 16 hours. Of course, if you put it on 1% volume, you know, you go for longer, wouldn't it? It means nothing to me. The Sony XB13, I get 3 hours 28. You think, wow, blimey, you used to get 5 hours 40. Now you only get 3 hours 28, but 2 hours 30 minutes at maximum volume compared to 2 hours 5 minutes at maximum volume. So that's actually better. And then 58 minutes at a reduced volume, whereas they reduced the volume twice on the XB12, but only once on the XB13. So you will get 3 hours 28 minutes battery life, and then you'll compare it to another speaker and you'll think, well, one's better than the other. No, because they reduce the volume. They don't. It used to be obvious because it went down to 20%. Now they do it a little bit more carefully, not quite so you'll notice it, and you'll do it all gradually over time. But there was only one actual reduction. That was 58 minutes. So 2 hours 30 plus another 58 minutes you'll get. Technically, that's less than the XB12, but actually it'll play for longer at maximum volume. Anything else of note? It's can use them both as a speakerphone. And the other thing is, I was going to tell you, what you do get, maybe that's the only reason now to get it, you do get Google Fast Pairing. So you're on your Android, it will come up, recognize you've got a Bluetooth speaker connected. Do you want to connect this? And then it will be location aware and all that sort of that. It's quite nice, but if you're someone who likes to remain anonymous, it's not going to be so nice to you. However, that can be a nice feature, and it does have Google Fast Pairing, and it means easy transferring to another phone, etc., etc. And you don't get that on the XB12. For some people, that may alone be a reason to upgrade. They both are IPX67, that's dust-proof, and up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. And they will float. Similar in weight, I think it was 243 grams versus 253 grams. And in terms of Bluetooth latency, very device specific. On my Android, on my Google, on my Samsung S10 Plus, 240 milliseconds on YouTube for the XB12, 116 milliseconds for the XB13. So a lot better on the XB13 for Bluetooth latency, in my experience on my phone or my device. But neither of them great. For me, cutoff point, 80 milliseconds for noticeable lip sync. However, it is better than the XB12. So, what can we expect? Let's have a look at the frequency response.
The original Sony XB12, the new Sony XB13, the main difference, if we look at 40, 60, 80%, we can see clearly XB13 has a bigger peak in the bass. It is upper bass. It's around 170 hertz. And the Sony XB12 has a very bright sound signature. You can see the really big peak now, all the way up to 4 kilohertz. Whereas there is a peak around 4.5 kilohertz on the Sony XB13, but it's a smiley face now. So between the two peaks, the bass and the presence region, there's a big dip in the sound compared to the Sony XB12, where it's a rise all the way up to 4 kilohertz. There's a roll-off at the high end after the peak on the XB13, where it's not rolling off in the XB12. So you can see clearly a big difference in XB13 is not going to sound as clear as the very bright Sony XB12, but it'll have a little bit more bass. Now, maximum volume, you can see it looks like the XB12 will probably go a lot louder because it has a bigger peak, where the XB13, I guess because it's got a little bit more bass, there's no rise compared to the XB12. So a big difference in the sound signatures of the older Sony XB12 and the newer Sony XB13.
So we used to have a clearly bright sound signature to the XB12. To me, it always sounded a bit thin, but very, very clear. And for some people, that's great. You're not buying a speaker like this expecting huge bass. Unless, of course, you buy into the marketing where it says extra bass. And for a lot of people, that will be great. Very different sound signature. So says the frequency response. Actual experience may be different. So the frequency response says, now we've got more bass, but a smiley, more crowd-pleasing sound signature, but might not go as loud as the XB12. And don't forget, we're only talking 5 watts. They're not going to go loud at all. By the way, just in case you're interested, it is a review. And let me try and be a little bit professional, show you exactly what's on the speaker. Got the power button there. You turn it on, guess what? It comes on. You get a green light. It's telling me it's connected. My Bluetooth is connected. The Bluetooth light comes on. You can... of course, pair it. So you got, by the way, the app does not work with the XB12. Sony do have their music app. Music Center app. The 12 and the 13 do not work with the app, but you do have your play, pause, you have your volume up, volume down, and just under the flap, of course, as I already showed you, just the USB-C charging. They've cleverly, where we've got the passive radiator, obviously, firing down, and you put it down, and they've got holes there, so it's not completely muffled when you've got it that way around. And by the way, when I do my testing, I'm going to record it at 45 degrees. Why are you doing that, Al? Well, because, as you see, they've both got straps, and by the way, it's a little bit bigger, the strap, a little bit thicker, wider, and longer on the XB13. So, of course, you could be playing it that way. Anyway, so 45 degrees covers all angles. The other thing about this actual form factor is, not to be sniffed at, you can play it like that. So you can actually rest it like that and have it as quite a directional speaker. I do like doing that, actually. So it doesn't have to be 360 form factor. It could be on-axis form factor. I am doing my recordings at 45 degrees, and this is my comparison around 50%. So pretty much as expected for looking at the frequency responses. For my money, for me, my personal opinion, and it is a matter of personal taste, I prefer the sound of the XB13 at those volumes. Those are low volumes. Please don't crank your volume all the way up. 50% on these speakers is less than probably that you would hear my actual voice at. Unless you're sitting right up close, and then that's obviously different. But bear that in mind when you're adjusting your volume. That's very, very low volume. But for my money, it's got more meat on the bones on this Sony XB13, but that's thin, but it's clear for a lot of people. That clarity wins over extra bass. In my personal opinion, my personal taste is more warmth. I like more meat on the bones, and I prefer the sound now of the XB13. But the thing is, they are very different sound signatures. One or the other is going to suit you. It's not like, oh, the XB13 is going to be better than the old one because it's got one number up. It's now no, they are very different sound signatures and different in size. So we've got a handle on the difference between the two speakers, but we want to have a handle on, well, what in terms of value, what else can you get? And that's the thing. 55 quid is not cheap for a little speaker like that at 5 watts. So we've got the Soundcore Mini 3. can get that for £27. And the Stormbox Micro, £40. They are both cheaper than the Sony XB13. So, the Sony XB13 is still going to be the best of the bunch, isn't it? Maybe not. Let's have a look. 75% of volume.
See what this could be. Quit playing games, just come in.
Secrets you're keeping, these promises strong as a spell. I'll never tell. It's true, 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 it's true. You're an angel, that's for sure. With some devil, hear you roar. But I like it, we on the floor. In my ear, be whispering. Used to have fun, now I'm bored. Do I miss you? Yes, of course. Think about that time when we stayed up all night talking. I could never let you go. Go on thinking about those secrets true. And I would never bet the world that I would
So for my money, it's pretty much what we knew all along. You got more meat on the bones with the Sony XB13, but it's a very different sound signature. For you, to some of your ears, it probably sound muffled compared to the Sony XB12. But the Sony XB12 lacks the bass weight. You're going to like one or the other, know the differences. Now, the Soundcore Mini 3. It's a smaller speaker. It's a cheaper speaker. But hey, for my money, at these volumes, I think it's a better listen. Not quite as clear sounding as the XB13, which is already muffled against the XB12. But that bass weight, proper bass weight, to me, you know, get more of the, you can get into the track. For me, for my money, where bass counts. For you, bass might not count, and that's, I know, the case for a lot of you. But if it does count for me, then Sony for the Soundcore Mini 3 is a winner. And then you come to the Tribit. Now it's a very different form factor, but in many ways it's a more friendly form factor. You can actually attach that easily to a pram handle, to your bicycle handle, and it easily unclips. Easily, very easily unclipped. Am I doing something wrong here? I am indeed doing something wrong. It very easily unclips if you use the right end. It unclips, put it around something, attach it again. But bear in mind, very different form factors. That's quite friendly for on-axis. You can't actually rest that in the same way for on-axis. Put it up against something. But hey, it's 40 quid. It's cheaper than the XB13. It's got more upper bass on the XB13, but hey, there's more bass weight. It's clearly more impact. For my money, it just sounds better. The Tribit Micro, different form factor, so that may be a factor for you, but it's cheaper and it sounds better. Let's go maximum volume.
Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest. Just wiggle your feet and shake. Just wiggle your feet and shake your chest.
So the XB12 and the Stormbox Micro are clearly louder than the other two speakers. The XB12 is louder overall, but it's also very thin sounding. Tribit Stormbox Micro holds on to more bass while being stronger in the mids, so it retains some clarity. Then we have the Soundcore Mini 3 decibels down in volume, 3 decibels down in loudness. Once you go past 80%, and especially in custom mode, there is a big dip in the bass on the Soundcore Mini 3, and it does struggle now at maximum volumes. The body that it had at low volumes has gone, and the quietest overall, the Sony XB13, but it does retain the most bass. It doesn't have the deep bass, I say deep bass, 50 to 100 hertz of the Tribit Stormbox Micro, 3 decibels down on the Stormbox Micro, but it has a much bigger upper bass. So overall, the bass is louder on the XB13, but louder bass with a lack of clarity. Compared to the other three, it's down in both the mids and the presence region. So it's down in the areas where you'd get some clarity. While retaining more bass, you may struggle to find that a reasonable listen, even though it's got bass. At maximum volumes, because they're all quite peak, 88 dB is not a lot. So at these volumes, a lack of clarity is a big deal.
So maximum volume, unfortunately, at low volumes, I really like the Soundcore Mini 3. Bear in mind, I'm using my custom settings, but you need custom settings to push out that bass, otherwise it still sounds dull in default mode. But with my custom settings, you go to maximum volume, yeah, it's dropping a lot of bass now. It's coming a bit dull. Most impact, undoubtedly, and it does have on paper the most power. And by the way, 9 watts that's rated at, and 6 watts it's rated on the Soundcore Mini 3. Clearly has more impact. Certainly has more bass weight, deeper bass below. None of them obviously are going to shake your floor. And when I talk about deep bass, below 100 hertz clearly has more weight. But above 100 hertz, yeah, it does sound a bit more thin. So the volume's there, but it can sound a bit thin, but the bass weight's there. And I would say overall it has impact. But bear in mind, it is kind of by nature a thin sounding speaker. And weirdly, of course, because it's not trying to drive any bass, the XB12 goes louder. It does go louder. Let's put on pause. It does go louder than the XB13, but it shouldn't be surprised. They're trying to drive bass. Bass costs, in terms of amp, it's only 5 watts anyway to start with. And it's ultra clear, but probably a bit too clear, probably a bit too brittle. But it will depend on your ears. Everybody has different tastes, and if it's all about being ultra clear, you know, this does sound a bit muddy now. It's holding on to some bass, but at a cost, it sounds a bit muddy. So overall, talking about small speakers into micro speaker territory, not truly micro, but they will call them micros. So these are called minis. That's called a micro, but they're all small. They're all around 250 grams at the end of the day. Which one are you going to buy? Well, for my money, below 100%, you know, 80% and below, I like the Soundcore Mini. I like the bass weight. The Tribit is the best value. There's no doubt it will go, you know, as loud as any of these others while retaining some bass weight. But for my money, it's slightly thin, slightly anemic, but awesome value for money. Of course, 2 of them, 80 quid. You know, you can almost get a party started before, you know, many people have actually arrived, I guess. XB12 at 55 quid. That's not good value. That's not a good price. I don't know what's going on. They've tried to give you a bit more bass, but it's cost you in terms of clarity. Do I prefer the XB13 over the XB12? I do, but I think it's overpriced at 55 quid. But if I had to have one of these 2 speakers, I would get the XB12. But bear in mind, because it does not have the clarity, because it's not as bright as the XB12, it's not going loud, even at maximum volume. You're struggling to get an exciting sound out of that. For my money, I don't know. If you're sitting like that and you're listening, 5 watts is fine. But I could just about get to a volume where I can get a satisfying sound out of that. Not really for my money. I can't even push to maximum volume. It sounds okay, but I can't get to the point where that's an exciting sound because of the lack of clarity, because it's slightly muddy, because it hasn't got the bright. It's a very different sound signature from the bright XB12. So although at lower volumes, if I was listening at these low volumes, and bear in mind they are low volumes, it sounds better, but there's no excitement there for me, for my money. I'd rather listen to the XB13, but if you need clarity, and if you're sitting any distance from the speaker, you're going to probably need to go for the XB12, and if you've already got the XB12, know what's going to happen if you spend a lot more money, the XB13. But clearly the best value here is a Tribit Stormbox Micro, but I still prefer at lower volumes. It just doesn't it doesn't go as loud and hold on to the bass when you start really pushing those volumes. But look at the size, it's actually smaller than both of them. So unless you're playing at maximum volume, I still think you're better off with the these Soundcore Mini 3 and the Tribit Stormbox Micro. That's my take. I know I've seen serious reviews, apparently serious reviews. Well, they look very serious when they're saying it. They say, well, this is sounding really nice and it can fill a room and it goes loud enough. Not for my money, I have to tell you, not for my money, because of the lack of clarity. It does not cut through enough air with 5 watts. That's my take on the Sony XB13 against the Sony XB12. I've got something out my review. I hope to see you again in another review. Thank you for watching.